The year is 1944. The world is deep in a great war. High above the noise, a new shape appears in the sky. A giant bird of shining metal. It flies higher and faster than any bomber before. This is the B-29 Superfortress. For people on the ground, it was a symbol of power. For others, a promise of hope. A sign the long war might end. The sound of its 4 powerful engines. A rumble of change. The B-29 was more than an airplane. It was a statement. America's answer, built to fly very long distances and to deliver a powerful blow. These missions took young men far from home, across vast oceans, into dangerous skies. They were farmers, they were teachers, they were factory workers. They became pilots, navigators, gunners. Their lives were tied to this great machine. Imagine it for the first time. The B-29 was a revolutionary aircraft, a machine far ahead of its time. One of its most important features was the pressurized cabin. Pressurized cabins and the tunnel connecting them. Before the B-29, bomber crews flew in the freezing cold of high altitudes. They had to wear heavy, bulky clothing oxygen masks to survive. But the Superfortress had special cabins that kept air pressure comfortable, like being on a small mountain. This let crews work more effectively on long, 10-hour missions. A long tunnel ran over the bomb bays, connecting the front cabins and the back cabins. Crew members could crawl between sections if needed. A small comfort in the vast emptiness of the sky. Another amazing feature, the remote-controlled gun system. On other bombers, gunners stood at open windows exposed to freezing wind. The B-29 was different. It had 5 gun turrets. Each turret mounted powerful .50 caliber machine guns. Gunners sat safely inside at special control stations. They used a computerized sight, like a video game controller, to aim and fire. One gunner could control multiple turrets, forming a deadly web of fire. A mission in a B-29 began long before the engines ever started. It started in the dark, hours before dawn, in a smoke-filled briefing room. The 11-man crew would gather to hear the details of their target. The commander would point to a map, showing a city or a factory hundreds of miles away. They learned about the weather they would face, the enemy fighters they might encounter, and the location of anti-aircraft guns. Every man listened carefully. The pilot, the tail gunner, they memorized the route, the altitude, and the time they were supposed to be over the target. The meeting was serious. Every detail a matter of life and death. After the briefing, the crew would head to their plane, waiting on the airfield like a sleeping giant. A B-29 crew in the early morning light, performing their pre-flight checks on the tarmac. There was no time to rest. The pre-flight check was long and careful. The pilot and co-pilot walked around the massive aircraft, inspecting the wings, inspecting the tires, checking the control surfaces. The flight engineer, perhaps the busiest man, checked the fuel levels and inspected the complex engines for any sign of a leak or problem. The gunners checked their turrets and their ammunition. Each man had a checklist. Every single item had to be perfect. Then came the most dangerous part before leaving the ground, starting the engines. The B-29's powerful engines were famous for being difficult. The flight engineer would carefully follow a precise sequence, feeding fuel just so. One by one, the giant propellers began to spin. Slowly at first, then faster and faster until they were a blur. The sound was deafening. A roar that shook the ground beneath them. It was the sound of immense power waiting to be unleashed. Finally, it was time for takeoff. Once airborne, the 11 men of the B-29 crew settled in for a long journey. The flight could last for 12 hours or more, and every man had a crucial job to do. The pilot and the co-pilot were in charge of flying the massive plane, keeping it steady and on course through changing weather. Behind them sat the flight engineer, who was like the plane's doctor. He constantly monitored the 4 engines, watching the gauges for temperature, oil pressure, and fuel consumption. He had to make sure the engines ran smoothly for the entire mission. If anything went wrong, it was his job to try to fix it. A heavy responsibility when you are thousands of miles from home. In the middle of the plane, the navigator and bombardier worked as a team. The navigator was the map reader, the one who guided the bomber across the vast, featureless ocean. He used the stars, his charts, and his instruments to find their exact position and make sure they were heading for the right target. The bombardier's job came at the end of the journey. He was responsible for aiming and dropping the bombs. Using the famous Norden bomb sight, a top-secret computer for its time, he would take control of the plane for the final moments of the bomb run, guiding it to the perfect release point. Communication was the glue that held the crew together. Every man was connected through an intercom system, a network of wires in their helmets. They were in constant contact, sharing information and updates. The pilot needed to know the course from the navigator. The gunners needed to warn the pilot about approaching enemy fighters. The flight engineer needed to report on the status of the engines. Their voices were a constant chatter in each other's ears, a chorus of teamwork that was essential for survival. In the lonely, dangerous skies, hearing a friendly voice was a small comfort that made them feel less alone. They were a family, bound together by their shared mission. This teamwork was built on months of training and trust. These men lived together, ate together, and flew together. They learned each other's strengths and weaknesses. They knew who was calm under pressure and who told the best jokes to ease the tension. This bond was tested in the heat of battle. When things went wrong, when an engine failed or a fighter attacked, they had to rely on each other completely. The pilot trusted the gunners to protect them. The crew trusted the pilot to fly them through the danger. Every successful mission was a victory for their teamwork, a testament to 11 men working as one. Flying a B-29 mission over Japan was one of the most dangerous jobs of the war. The journey itself was a challenge, a long flight over the cold, unforgiving Pacific Ocean. If an engine failed or the plane had to ditch, the chances of being rescued were very slim. The crew flew for hours over nothing but water, a vast blue emptiness that offered no second chances. The constant drone of the engines and the vibration of the aircraft and every flicker on a gauge reminded them how far they were from safety. Just getting to the target was a battle against distance and mechanical failure. As the B-29S approached the coast of Japan, the real danger began. The sky, empty for hours, would suddenly come alive. Enemy fighter planes, like the Japanese Zero, would rise to meet them. These fighters were fast and agile, their pilots determined to shoot down the big bombers. B-29 gunners scanned the sky, eyes on tiny black dots that quickly grew into attackers. The intercom crackled. Fighters at 3 o'clock high. The calm was shattered by machine guns and tracer bullets zipping past the windows. Even if they avoided fighters, another threat waited over the target. Flak. Ground guns fired explosive shells into the sky. The shells were timed to explode at bomber altitude, creating clouds of black smoke and flying metal shrapnel. B-29AS had to fly straight and level through the storm of steel to drop accurately. The sound of flak hitting the plane was terrifying, like rocks on metal. A lucky hit could damage an engine, tear a hole in a wing, or worst of all, kill a crew member. The bomb run was the most intense moment of all. For those minutes, the bombardier was in control. The pilot could do nothing to avoid flak or fighters. The plane had to be a stable platform. The crew held their breath as the bomb bay doors opened, exposing them to freezing air and the chaos below. Then came the shout, "Bombs away!" The plane lurched upward as it released its heavy load. A moment of relief, but danger remained. They still had to fly back through the flak, through the fighters, and endure the long, nerve-wracking journey home. The history of the B-29 is filled with incredible stories of bravery. One such story, the crew of Dauntless Dottie. On a mission over Tokyo, flak hit their bomber hard. One engine was on fire. The plane was losing altitude fast. Captain Robert Morgan knew they couldn't make Tinian. He aimed instead for Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima had just been captured by American forces. It became a race against time. The crew worked desperately to keep the plane aloft. Teamwork kept them alive. Flight engineer, managing fuel to keep engines running. Gunners, keeping lookout, even wounded. Navigator, finding a tiny island with damaged instruments. Every man depended on his neighbor. Voices over the intercom kept spirits focused. It proved their training and bond. They were brothers in a fight for survival. They spotted the runway on Iwo Jima. Their last drops of fuel were running out. Captain Morgan made a dangerous landing. The crippled bomber came down on a short, unfinished runway. The plane was riddled with flak holes. All 11 men survived. Their story became legend. Courage and skill against impossible odds. Countless others showed heroism. Bombardiers stayed at bomb sites, wounded. Flight engineers crawled into unpressurized wing compartments to fix fuel lines. Pilots held steady as friends burned around them. Ordinary young men, extraordinary courage in the face of fear. Their quiet bravery was the true strength of the B-29 campaign. We remember not just the survivors, but those who gave everything. Their sacrifice and courage continue to inspire us today, a testament to the human spirit under the most extreme conditions. The B-29 superfortress played a decisive role in the final year of World War II. Its ability to fly long distances and carry massive bomb loads allowed the Allies to strike at the heart of Japan's war industry. These missions, first from high altitude with explosive bombs and later from low altitude with incendiary bombs, devastated Japan's cities and factories. This relentless campaign crippled the country's ability to continue the war. The B-29 became the ultimate instrument of strategic bombing. It marked a new and terrible chapter in the history of warfare. The war in the Pacific came to a sudden and dramatic end in August 1945. It was a B-29, the Enola Gay, that dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Enola Gay Ontinian, its silver body reflecting the bright Pacific sun. The blast over Hiroshima changed everything. A few days later, another B-29, Bockscar, dropped the second atomic bomb on Nagasaki. Nagasaki was hit and the devastation was immediate. These two missions unleashed a power unlike anything the world had ever seen and forced Japan's surrender, finally ending World War II. The B-29 will forever be linked to the dawn of the nuclear age. It was the only aircraft at the time capable of delivering such a weapon, cementing its place in history as the plane that brought the world's greatest conflict to its conclusion. After the war, the legacy of the B-29 continued. The lessons learned from its design and technology shaped the future of aviation. The pressurized cabin became standard on all large aircraft, leading directly to the comfortable passenger airliners we know today. Its powerful engines and long-range capabilities were the foundation for the next generation of military bombers and transport planes. The B-29 was the bridge between the propeller-driven planes of World War II and the jet age that was just beginning. It was a technological stepping stone that made modern air travel possible. Today, as we remember the B-29, we remember more than just a machine of war. We remember the thousands of young men who flew, fought, and died in them. We remember the engineers and factory workers. The B-29 is a symbol of a generation's sacrifice and ingenuity. It is a reminder of the terrible costs of war and the incredible lengths to which people will go to achieve victory. The silver gleam of the superfortress reflects a pivotal moment in history, a legacy of fire, innovation, and courage that will never be forgotten.